Hello everybody and welcome back to the wild world of modular synthesis. Today we're going to be learning about effectively interfacing with MIDI devices instead of just the keyboard like we have been. Like that. So using a keyboard is fine for basic playing. The keyboard allows you to convey pitch and also the gate of the note that you would like to play. But using a more complex MIDI device like this will allow you more control over the sound of your patch in a performance. So some MIDI devices are just keyboards, not computer keyboard, but piano keyboard. And even if you just have a regular old keyboard, no dials, no knobs, that still adds an extra dimension to your patch by encoding something called velocity. So the velocity of a note is basically how hard you hit it. So you hit it harder and the note will be louder. You hit it softer and the note will be quieter. So in VCV Rack, you'll use the same MIDI to control voltage, but instead of computer keyboard, there will be some option in here that will have something to do with MIDI. In my case, it's ELSA. And if you have your device plugged into your computer and all your drivers and everything, you should see your device. So now if I play on this, now we can see there's that added velocity, and that'll just add another dimension to your playing. So that's pretty neat. Some MIDI controllers come with these two little wheels, usually to the left of the keyboard. And those are the mod wheel and pitch wheel, which you can see in the MIDI to control voltage, the PW output and the MW output. And these correspond to the pitch wheel and mod wheel, respectively. And there's also an aftertouch output, but this keyboard doesn't have that, so I won't be going over that. Whoops. So the pitch wheel is usually a wheel that's centered around 0, and it will return to 0 when you let it go. So it's kind of like a spring, and when you pull it down, you get a lower voltage, -5 volts, yeah. And when you push it up, you get a higher voltage. So you can do that. While the mod wheel is just a freely spinning wheel, also that starts at 0 when it's at the bottom, goes all the way up to 10 volts. So we can use these in performance to add some qualities to the sound. For example, if we have a low frequency oscillator and we hook that up to the frequency modulation, we hook the sine of that up to the frequency modulation of our voltage controlled oscillator. It's pretty crazy. So maybe we don't want such a we don't want such a vibration. We would like it so that we can change that how we want. And a good way to do that would be with the mod wheel. So we can put the sine of the LFO into a voltage controlled amplifier, and then the control voltage input would be the mod wheel, and the output would be the frequency. So if we look at that, we can see here that the value that the mod wheel is at determines the highest value of the oscillation. So we can use this to change how much of a wobble we get. And of course, if we want to limit like the maximum, we can just change the frequency modulation percent knob. So I think that's a bit ridiculous. Let's try 2. Yeah. So if you wanted, you could sing a little song, say... I don't really like the velocity thing, so we're not going to do that. Like, you could do that. Aside from changing the amplitude of the wobble, you could also, the LFO itself also has a frequency modulation input. So if we connect the mod wheel to that, and we lower this down to maybe 1%, get rid of that, and we won't need that anymore. So just connect that directly, and we look at what this is doing. So we can see with the mod wheel lower, the frequency of the LFO looks like this, but as we turn it up, we get a lot more. So let's put that to maybe about 10. Let's see how that sounds. And maybe bring that down to 4. Yeah, and we can change that just using this mod wheel, change the frequency of that. Now the pitch wheel, as its name suggests, is usually reserved for pitch. Let's bring it down. So we can take this pitch wheel output and put it through a voltage scaler and get a mixer. So we can mix the pitch that's coming directly from the key that we press, and we can mix that with some voltage coming from the pitch wheel that we will scale so that it's in a good range, and we'll mix those, put that into the volts per octave. So like we said before, this pitch wheel is from -5 to 5 volts, so that'll be our input. And so if it's 1 volt per octave, 12 notes per octave, if we want this pitch wheel to give us maybe 1 whole step of range on either side, then we would scale the -5 to 5 to -2/12 to 2/12. And I think that's right. I think that math is right. So let's see. When I press a note, that is that's what we expect. Yep. And then if I bend the pitch wheel up or down, while playing that note, we can see the pitch kind of slides with it. And just to verify, I'll play a C, slide it up all the way, and that should be a D. So yep. So a C slid up all the way is a D, and a D slid down all the way is a C. And so you can use that just to add some more feeling to your performances. And with the pitch wheel, you can actually go into like a micro tonality just by shifting it a little bit. So yep. So that's the mod wheel and the pitch wheel, and just some ways to use those. But a lot of MIDI devices will have other things like these sliders and these buttons and these dials or knobs, or like a bank like that. And these can all be used in some interesting ways as well. So to use these, you'll need something a little bit more than the MIDI to control voltage. You'll need something called, it's the, I think that it is this one. Yep. So you'll select a MIDI device. For me, it's port 1 of my MIDI device, because the keys and the pitch wheel and mod wheel are on different ports than the sliders, I'm pretty sure, but we'll see. So this MIDI CC to CV will allow you to take a channel from a MIDI device and output its value as control voltage. So for example, we'll click on that. Yep, and then we move one of the knobs, and it will link that port right here to this knob. And so that's just it. The term for that is learning. When you say, okay, the next input that I give, take note of where that is. So you're kind of prepping it to learn. And so each of these outputs will give you the value of these sliders. And of course you can do the same thing if you have buttons like these. And that one just gives you a gate. So when you hold it down, it's 10 volts. Let it go, it's back to 0. That's usually how the buttons work. And then we've also got the knobs. So if we get a few of those, there we go. Now we can turn those and get some kind of voltage from it. And using that, if you get your patch set up all how you want it to be, you could really go without using the mouse at all. You could just use the knobs on your MIDI device to control the parameters that you want to control. So I can use this knob to control the attack of the ADSR now. also do the release. And there's all kinds of stuff that you could do. Like if you had it set up correctly, you could use these buttons to address a switch and change outputs. So that's more of an advanced technique, but maybe we'll see how it works. So if we have, let's see, switch 8 to 1. So this will just take take 8 inputs, give 1 output based on whichever input is selected. Let's see. So you could also do, so there's an important thing called sample and hold, which will take the value of something when a trigger happens and then hold it there until the next trigger. So I think that would be an important thing to use here. So if we also another mix. So if we have this row is the first 4 buttons. So let's say that we want to use button 1 and button 2 to switch between different oscillators or something like that. So if we take each of them, mix them, and look on a scope, the line goes up when we press button 1. Line also goes up when we press button 2. And when we press both of them, it also goes up, but that won't really count. So when we press either of them, it's going to generate a gate, which is just kind of like an extended trigger. So we'll hook that up to the trigger of both sample and holds. And for the input of each of them, we'll hook that up to the button itself. Now if we put these outputs on the scope here, we press button 1, we can see here, well, let's offset a little bit. We can see yellow's on top. We hit button 2, we can see they switch, and red's on top. So we can use that I don't think we'll need the switch actually. We can use that along with some voltage controlled amplifiers and some more mixers. We could even use a voltage controlled mixer, I think. No. We could use one of these, but yeah, might as well. So we'll use that. The control voltage for channel 1 will be this yellow line, so that goes from here. And for channel 2, it'll be the red line. All right, so we can see here channel 1 is at 10, channel 2 is at 0. So that's good. And we'll route the output of this to the audio. So the input for channel 1 will be this. So that sound. Nothing different has happened so far. But if we get another oscillator, and let's just copy this whole thing. Voltage controlled oscillator, ADSR, and VCA. And this time, instead of the sine, we'll use the square wave. And then hook that up to the input of channel 2. So now channel 2 would sound like this. Oop. We've got to hook up the voltage octave. We'll do frequency modulation as well. The gate and the retrigger. A bit harsh, so we'll turn that down. But if we take the mix output of these, we can see channel 1 is on, channel 2 is off. So when we're playing, we can only hear channel 1. But if we hit button 2 and keep track of what happens to the yellow and the red, and to this, they switch. Now channel 2 has 10 volts and channel 1 has 0 volts. Yeah, so that's one way that you could go about having different voices to your synth and using these buttons to switch between them. You could also do it earlier in the process. You can hear if we switch while a note is still going on. Both of them actually got played. So if we were to do this sample and hold stuff and change like and put it between the gate and the volts per octave and the retrigger, instead of putting it all the way at the end after the sounds have already been made, then it would produce a cleaner effect. But we won't do that. I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader, so to speak. Yeah, so that's basically it. How to use a MIDI device to more effectively create interesting sounds and performance. So you've got the pitch wheel, the mod wheel, some dials, they're fun, some buttons that you can use to change the voice of your synth, and some dials, or knobs, that you can use just like you use the sliders. So yeah, that's about it. I hope that you learned something today, and if you have any ideas for what I should cover next, go ahead and leave it down in the comments. And happy synthin'.